My name is Ella Reynolds. I'm 36 years old. I never imagined there would come a day when I'd be standing alone in the parking lot of Boulder's most upscale restaurant, with a bouquet of white lilies in hand and not a single family member who wanted to see me. It was my mother's 65th birthday, an occasion that should have been filled with laughter, memories, and love. Instead, the man who gave me life stood at the grand oak doors and blocked me, his eyes cold as steel. Ella, you're not on the list, my father said, his voice flat like he was reading out loud from a policy memo, not talking to his only daughter who had flown in from California. Ella, I froze. One question echoed in my head. Why? Just behind him stood my sister, Claire. Always perfect, always poised, she leaned against the marble wall, her gaze locked on mine. Then came that smirk. Not joyful, satisfied. I just wanted to wish Mom a happy birthday, I whispered. This party is for the people who are truly present in her life, Ella, my father replied. Not for someone who only sends cards on holidays. I had spent the whole week preparing for this moment. A thoughtful gift. A short but heartfelt toast. I even picked out the purple dress Mom once said brings out your eyes. And now, here I stood, like a stranger on the wrong side of a door I should have walked through as her daughter. I used to believe Mom was the only one who truly saw and loved me. She was the only one who ever stood up for me when I felt like a ghost inside my own family. I'm the middle child, and if you've ever been one, you know. We're not the stars, but we're not the fragile ones either. Claire was the pride of the family, Princeton graduate, Capitol Hill intern, always the one Mom bragged about at holidays. My younger brother, Ben, 4 years my junior, was the baby. He could mess up 100 times and still be forgiven. And me? I was, Ella can take care of herself. Ella doesn't need help. He's a strong. But there were days I wasn't strong. Nights I cried alone in my tiny apartment in San Diego, where I worked as a project manager for a construction firm. No one asked if I was okay. No one knew I had surgery to remove a benign tumor last year. Because I was afraid if I told them, all I'd hear was, well, good luck with that. Truth is, Mom wasn't always distant. I still remember the day I turned 14 and my high school friends ditched me. She brought home a tiny cake and said, "You don't need a crowd to know your worth." I believed her. I believed that no matter what, she was where I belonged. But today, Mom didn't come to the door. She didn't know I was here. And I, Ella Reynolds, was standing there wondering if I ever truly belonged to this family or if I was just a background character in someone else's carefully written script. I tightened my grip on the bouquet. The lily petals trembled in the spring breeze. My chest felt hollow. Not from rejection, but because I was starting to grow used to not being chosen. Unfortunately for me, that afternoon, when I was 8, when my best friend Emily threw a sleepover and pointedly left me out, I stood by my bedroom window, watching the twinkling lights from her backyard across the street. I thought Mom would tell me to let it go, pretend it didn't matter. But she didn't. She pulled me into the kitchen, poured me a cup of hot cocoa, and dug out Ben's old play tent from the basement. "If they didn't invite you to their party," she said, "then you and I will throw our own, right here in the living room." We laid out blankets on the floor, lit scented candles, and played soft music. She even taped a sign on the wall that read, "Welcome to Ella's exclusive party, only guest, most important person." Back then, I believed I had a special place in her heart. I held on to that belief for years. When I was 13, I won 3rd place in the school art contest. Claire didn't care, Ben barely looked up from his video game. But Mom? She printed out my painting in color, framed it, and hung it proudly on the kitchen wall where everyone would see it. When Dad said it clashed with the decor and should be taken down, Mom quietly removed it. And I later found it tucked safely inside her nightstand drawer. She was the only one who had ever defended me. But everything changed when I left Boulder for Stanford. Choosing to move 3 states away wasn't an accident. I didn't want to live in Claire's shadow forever, the perfect daughter following the exact path the family had planned. She stayed in Denver for law school, worked at our uncle's firm, and lived just minutes from our parents. Everyone called it loyalty. I called it a velvet cage. I chose Stanford not just for its prestige, but because it gave me the space to finally be myself. Those early days in California were anything but easy. But I found my voice, my independence, and belief in my own abilities. I started working part-time, then interned at a small architecture and construction firm. 4 years later, I graduated with a degree in civil engineering and an offer from one of the West Coast's top urban development corporations. I didn't just leave home, I broke free from the role my family had written for me. While Claire stayed behind and walked the path drawn for her, I navigated every crack and detour with no map. At 30, I was appointed project director of the Redwood Heights complex, a development worth over $40 million. When the news made it to the local paper, I mailed a copy home. No one replied. Not a single congratulations. But a few weeks later, my mom called. "Do you still like that grilled chicken salad I make?" she asked. Her voice was soft, almost unfamiliar. I didn't know if she asked because she missed me or because she felt guilty. But I said, "I still do." And she replied, "Next time you're home, I'll make it." That next time came 2 years later, and she never mentioned the salad again. Since I left, the calls grew fewer, first weekly, then monthly. Eventually, they became brief holiday texts. "Merry Christmas, Ella. Hope you're doing well." Every time I tried to say I wanted to visit, she would say, "This month is crazy." Or, "Ben's sick, Claire's stressed about a case." Always some reason, as if my presence was a disruption, not something to look forward to. I used to wonder, did Mom change or did I? But this afternoon, standing blocked from her birthday party, one truth hit harder than ever. The woman who used to stand with me no longer does. I used to believe that if I just became successful enough, the recognition would come. I was wrong. When I appeared on the cover of Urban Vision in their 25 Women Reshaping American Cities feature, I mailed the magazine home. I secretly hoped, no need for Dad to say anything, no need for Ben to react, just one message from Mom. "I saw you in the magazine, Ella. I'm proud of you." Instead, the only call I received was from Claire, and it began with, "Just a reminder that success out there doesn't mean you understand this family better." I was used to that tone, sweet on the surface, laced with poison underneath. But this time, I didn't stay silent. "Claire, I'm not asking for applause. I just want to be treated like part of the family, not some outsider with the last name Reynolds." Silence. Then, a sigh so long it made me feel like a pouting child again. "You're the one who left, Ella. Don't blame us for staying." The call ended with a cold, flat beep. And from that moment, every invisible wall in my family became painfully real. Last Thanksgiving, I returned to Boulder. For the first time in 3 years after managing projects in San Diego, Houston, and a short stint in Seattle. I didn't tell anyone. I wanted to surprise them. But I was the one caught off guard. Claire had hosted her own dinner at her house, and everyone, Dad, Mom, Ben, was there. I arrived at 7 p.m. just as the turkey was being placed on the table. Mom opened the door, confused. Dad stood behind her, arms crossed. Claire came out from the kitchen, holding a wine glass, in a fitted red silk dress and that familiar smile of quiet victory. "Oh, Ella, you didn't say you were coming." "I wanted it to be a surprise," I said, trying to keep my tone even. "Shame," she said, "the table's already full." I looked around. 8 people, 3 empty chairs. Ben shrugged and looked away. Mom turned toward the kitchen to grab another plate, but Claire gently pulled her hand. "No need, Mom. Ella understands." I froze. And for the first time in my life, I said what I'd always swallowed. You're not the head of this family, Claire, and I'm not invisible. The air turned solid. Mom turned back, voice small. Ella, please, don't make a scene. I'm not making a scene, Mom, but I won't accept being pushed aside like I don't exist. My dad stepped closer, eyes meeting mine. Not angry, not cold, just tired. If you can't be respectful on a day meant for family, maybe you shouldn't be here. My heart pounded, each beat cracking something inside my chest. I said nothing more. I turned and walked away, my heels echoing across the tile. Behind me, the door closed with a soft click, but it was loud enough to silence every illusion I had left. Since that day, Mom stopped calling. Her texts came only on holidays. Just one line, no emojis, no questions. Ben practically vanished. I texted to ask how he was doing. He replied with a single word, fine. I sent a picture of my cat. No response. I left a voice message asking if he remembered the backyard camping trips we used to have as kids. He simply left it unseen. I kept wondering, were they choosing silence, or had Claire painted a new version of me and they believed it? Either way, I had become an outsider in the very story that bore my last name. And from that moment on, I stopped trying to be accepted. I shifted all my focus to work. I volunteered for extra projects in Las Vegas and Phoenix, dove into 12-hour workdays with no weekends, no vacations. I told colleagues I liked being busy. The truth? I just didn't want to sit still. Because when I sat still, I remembered. I had unfollowed Claire on Facebook years ago. Every time I opened my phone and saw her posts, family dinner, weekend with Mom, Ben got into an advanced mixology course. It felt like someone twisting a knife in my chest. But that day, while waiting for a Zoom meeting with a partner team in Portland, I got a text from a former coworker back in Boulder. Ella, your mom looks amazing in this photo. Happy birthday to her. Attached was a Facebook link. I clicked, and instantly my palms began to sweat. It was a post about my mother's 65th birthday, hosted at a lakeside restaurant in Estes Park. The event backdrop shimmered in gold, with bold lettering, Happy 65th, Lillian Reynolds, celebrating a life of love and inspiration. I hadn't been invited, I hadn't even known, and my name wasn't listed among the confirmed guests. I froze. In the corner of the image were familiar faces. Aunt Lorraine, Uncle Walter from Salt Lake City, even Mom's longtime friend Mrs. Shirley, who had moved to Florida back in 2012. Everyone was there. Except me. I sat in my San Diego apartment, late afternoon sun casting golden rays across my desk. Part of me wanted to shut my laptop, delete the app, bury the feeling. But the other part, the part that once held Mom's hand while building blanket forts in the living room, refused to stay quiet. I made the call. Mom picked up after the third ring. Her voice was the same, slightly husky, warm, but there was a weight in it, something weary. Ella, is everything okay, honey? I hesitated. I just saw a post about your birthday party at Estes Park. Oh, a pause. Yes, that was something Claire and Ben planned. I guess Claire just posted about it. I don't use Facebook much. And I wasn't on the guest list? I asked, my voice low, but each word heavy. This time, Mom didn't answer right away. Claire said you were busy, that you had an urgent project in Arizona. She told me she had already spoken to you. No one said anything, Mom. I heard her sigh. Ella, of course you should have been there. It's my birthday after all. If you'd wanted to come, I would have loved that. Truly. It was too late. But I could still hear something in her voice. A faint longing, soft like a candle in the wind. And I knew, if I didn't reach for this fragile chance, there might not be another moment where I could stand beside my mom without walls between us. That same night, I went online to book a ticket, a round-trip business class flight from San Diego to Denver, close to $1,800. I booked it without hesitation. The next morning, I requested time off. My assistant, Rachel, was stunned. Last time you took a day off was when you got your wisdom teeth removed, right? I gave a faint smile. This time, it's for family. For this trip, I spared no detail. I visited an antique store in the Gaslamp Quarter and found a vintage pearl necklace. Just like the ones Grandma used to wear, as Mom often said. I added a full spa gift certificate for the resort by the lake. Mom had once said she dreamed of going there, but always brushed it off as too indulgent. Total, almost $3,000. Some might say I went overboard, but I wasn't trying to buy forgiveness. I was trying to reclaim what had been lost. The night before the flight, I stood in front of my mirror wearing a deep teal dress. Simple, elegant, the kind Mom always liked. I pressed my lips together, practicing my smile. Happy birthday, Mom! I'm so glad to be here. Easy to say. But if I got the chance, I would say it with everything I had. The next morning, I wheeled my suitcase toward the airport, stepping into a journey powered not just by engines, but by every fragile piece of hope I had left. I didn't know if I would be welcome, but I knew one thing. I needed to be there. Even if only to know I'd tried one last time. I arrived at Hearthstone Pines right on time. 6 p.m. The Colorado sky was still bright, but the sunlight had begun to stretch long across the pine-lined stone path leading to the main entrance. The air was crisp despite late spring, but my chest burned. With nerves? The parking lot was nearly full. I recognized Aunt Lorraine's car, Uncle Walter's familiar SUV, and a silver Cadillac, my father's car. Next to it, Claire's cream-colored sedan. Nothing had changed. They were still punctual, still together. I stepped out of the car, holding a gift box wrapped in pale cream silk paper with a soft blue ribbon. Mom's favorite color. I checked my dress, smoothed my hair, then made my way toward the entrance. My heart pounded as I saw my father at the front door, standing beside a clipboard and a black-suited attendant. "Hi, Mr. Robert," I said, offering a small smile. My father looked up, his gaze blocking the last rays of sunlight. No furrowed brows, no sign of surprise, just that familiar emptiness. "Ella," he said, his voice dry as sandpaper, "I came to wish Mom a happy birthday." He looked down at the clipboard, then back at me. "You're not on the list." I was stunned. "I called Mom. She said I could come," I said, trying to keep my voice even. "She invited me." My father didn't budge. "The guest list was pre-approved. If your name's not on it, you can't come in." Right then, Claire appeared from inside. She wore a soft pink dress, her hair curled like Mom used to wear in her youth. She walked right up to Dad, wineglass in hand, and looked me over as if I were a delivery person at the wrong door. "Oh, Ella," she said, her voice so sweet it stung. "You really showed up?" I gripped the gift tighter, lifting my chin. "I called Mom. She invited me. This is her birthday, not yours." Claire chuckled, swirling her glass. "She invited you because she felt cornered. You know she hates confrontation. Who do you think you are, walking in like nothing ever happened?" "I'm her daughter," I said, voice low but firm, "and I flew over 1,000 miles to be here today." "But you're not on the list," Dad repeated, this time like a verdict. I stood frozen. A group of guests passed by, averting their eyes, but not their curiosity. A woman I recognized as Mom's former gardener whispered, "Is that Ella? I thought she didn't talk to the family anymore." Claire smiled like she'd just won a chess match. "Next time, Ella, maybe confirm before booking the flight." I inhaled deeply, exhaled slowly, then gently set the gift box on a small table near the door. I didn't come to cause a scene. I came to wish Mom a happy birthday. This is the gift I brought. I looked directly at my father. Please give it to her. And tell her I hope she has a wonderful birthday. Before anyone could say another word, I turned and walked away. Not hurried, not flustered. I'd gotten used to being cropped out of the family picture, but this time I didn't collapse. I didn't run. I heard Claire's soft laugh behind me, my father mumbling to someone else. I didn't turn around. Only when I got into the car, hands trembling as I turned the key, did I let the tears fall. But not because they had hurt me, because I had once believed I still belonged there. I had just placed my hands on the steering wheel when a knock at the passenger side window made me jump. I turned. There stood a tall man, light brown hair, gray tailored suit. His eyes held something unfamiliar. Regret and sincerity. I rolled the window down, still reeling, when he softly spoke. "Ms. Reynolds, sorry to bother you. Who are you?" I cut in, clearly on edge. My mind couldn't handle another discomfort. "I'm Adam, Claire's boyfriend," he replied with a polite nod. "We haven't met before, but actually, I work at the same company as you, San Diego branch, Structural Analysis Department." I frowned. The name Adam Keller immediately surfaced from the back of my memory. He was one of the mid-level engineers recently transferred from the Texas office earlier this year. And me? I was the executive director overseeing the entire Western region. In other words, he was technically under my management. I looked at him, suspicious. "You just watched me get turned away from my family's party, and now you're introducing yourself like this is a job interview?" Adam gave an awkward smile. "I know, the timing is terrible, but I couldn't let you leave like that." I stayed silent. He continued, his voice lower. "Claire doesn't know I work under you. She knows I'm at Vertex, but I've never told her the specifics. I didn't think the two worlds would ever collide like this." I leaned an elbow on the steering wheel and sighed. "So why did you follow me out here, Adam?" "To tell the truth," he said, eyes steady on mine, "I heard Claire and your father talking last night. They planned to keep you out of the party. Claire said if you showed up, they'd pretend your name wasn't on the list. That if needed, they'd handle the situation right at the door." My blood ran cold. I stared at him. "Did my mom know?" Adam shook his head. "I don't think so. Last night she even asked if you might surprise everyone by coming. Claire told her you'd declined the invitation because of a project in Texas." I bit my lip. "I never said that." "I know," he replied, "and I think your mom suspects something, but Claire controls everything. Her meds, visitors, even who gets to call. Everything goes through Claire." I rested my head against the seat, the weight of it all crashing down like cold water. "I also heard Claire say that, if needed, let people believe you distanced yourself from the family long ago," Adam added, his words slow, as if afraid each one might crush me. "She didn't just want you out. She wanted everyone to think you deserved to be left out." I clenched my fists, nails digging into my palms until they turned white. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked, unable to hide the bitterness. "You're her boyfriend." "I used to think Claire was straightforward," Adam said, "until I saw you standing at that door," and she smiled. I said nothing. This time the silence seemed to bother him more. "And one more thing," Adam said, looking directly at me. "I've worked at Vertex for almost 8 months, and at the office, you're nothing like the version of you that Claire described." I tilted my head. "What did she say?" "That you're cold, selfish, obsessed with money and status, that you have no time for family, and you look down on anyone who doesn't live like you." I gave a bitter laugh. "That sounds familiar. But at the office," he went on, "people speak about you with respect. You make fast decisions, but you're always fair. You never belittle anyone. And you remember even the temp assistant's name." A flicker stirred in me. Not pride, but sorrow. Sorrow that my family had never seen any of that. Ella, Adam said gently, I thought you should know. So you'd understand. This isn't your fault, and if you decide to go back inside, you won't be alone. I looked at him, surprised. You mean, you'll go in with me? I don't know what'll happen, he sighed, but I know what it feels like to be pushed to the edges, and no one deserves that, especially not in their own family. I was quiet for a long moment, then I opened the car door. Then let's go. I never imagined that walking back toward the door that had just been slammed in my face would require this much courage. But I was no longer the Ella from 10 years ago, the one who used to crumble from a cold look from Dad or a whispered insult behind her back. I walked beside Adam, the man who should have stood by Claire, but now he was holding the side door open for me, whispering, "If it gets bad, just look at me." We entered through a side hallway that led to the secondary lobby. Soft music floated through the air, glasses clinked, and laughter echoed from nearly 60 guests, none of whom noticed the two people quietly stepping into the room from the back. I stood still for a few seconds, scanning the space. The golden light bathed my mother's lavender dress. She was seated at the center table, her hair pinned up neatly, her face glowing like a Southern Living cover model. Beside her was Claire, chatting with a group of guests, one hand lightly resting on Mom's, like a silent claim of ownership. I stepped forward. The soft clack of my low heels echoed louder than I expected. A few heads turned. Claire was the first to notice. Her eyes widened briefly, then narrowed into cold slits. Lips tight, she stood up. Ella? My mother turned too. She looked like she'd stopped breathing at the sight of me, then glanced at Claire, her expression laced with an unspoken question. Before anyone could cut in, Adam stepped forward, his voice ringing clear in the momentarily hushed room. Good evening, everyone. I'm Adam Keller, Claire's boyfriend. But today, I'd like to introduce to you this woman not just as the daughter of Mrs. Lillian Reynolds, but also as my executive director at Vertex Technology. The air seemed to get sucked out of the room for a moment. Glasses paused mid-air, conversations cut off mid-sentence. My mother stood abruptly, her eyes shifting from me to Adam, then back again. You came after all? I nodded, walking toward her. Mom, I called you last week. You told me to come, and I did, but I was stopped at the door. Claire quickly interjected, her voice sweet but rushed. Mom, didn't Ella say she wasn't sure she'd attend? We didn't want any tension on your special day. I never said that, I turned to Claire. I clearly told you I was coming. I booked a flight, bought a gift, and rearranged my entire schedule to be here. My mother's face darkened. Robert, she called my father, who stood off to the side. Is it true she was turned away? My father stepped forward, posture as rigid as ever. I did what I had to do to preserve the tone of the evening. The girl said once that family was a burden. I never said that, I cut in, not using the word dad for the first time. I said I'd built a life for myself. That doesn't mean I reject family. A strange silence settled over the room. Several guests turned their eyes toward my mother, the only person now who could shift the balance. Claire, my mother turned to my sister. You told me Ella declined the invitation? Claire swallowed, trying to stay composed. Mom, I just thought... I assumed if Ella didn't really want to... No, you don't get to make that decision for me. My mother's voice was sharp for the first time. And you don't get to lie. No one said another word. I stood there, looking at my mother, the same woman who used to cut paper hats for my 8th birthday, now seeing me like she was meeting me for the first time. Ella, she said softly, I'm so sorry. Would you sit beside me? I walked toward her, my eyes stinging. I hadn't forgiven, but I no longer carried hate. Claire stood still, her hand whitening as it clenched her wineglass. And me? For the first time in years, I felt present. The atmosphere grew heavy. The whispers among the guests faded to silence as my mother, Lillian Reynolds, stood amid the elegant setting of her 65th birthday. The celebration centered around her. The warm light from above cast a soft glow on her silver hair, but her eyes were completely clear. "Robert," she turned to my father, her voice calm but firm, "did you really refuse to let Ella in?" My father slowly set his glass down and stood tall, still with the stance of an old soldier, but this time, his authority didn't shield him. "I just thought, after what she's said about the family, after the absences, maybe it was better if—" "Ella never said she didn't need her family," my mother interrupted. "I read the email she sent for Thanksgiving last year. She clearly said she wanted to make amends, that she missed me. But I don't understand why I never heard those things." She turned to Claire. "Claire, you read that message. What did you tell me?" Claire faltered. "Mom, I just didn't want you upset again. Every time Ella calls, you get emotional, then you lose sleep, and you don't get to make that call for me." For the first time in many years, I saw my mother truly angry. Not irritated, but a quiet fury born from the hurt of being manipulated. "You thought you were protecting me, but really you were taking over everything." Claire pressed her lips together, turning to my father for support, but he remained silent. His expression was no longer stern, just empty. He looked at my mother, sighed, and quietly pulled out a chair to sit down. At that moment, Adam, Claire's boyfriend, stepped forward, his voice gentle but clear. "I'm sorry to bring this up during such a moment, but I think Mrs. Lillian deserves to know the truth. Claire told me that Ella pulled away from the family, that she was too busy, too proud to maintain those ties. But after working at Vertex and realizing Ella is my boss, I saw that image wasn't accurate." He paused, glanced at me, then continued. "I saw the respect her team has for her, the way she pays attention to every person, every detail. She's nothing like what Claire described." The room tensed. Claire spun toward Adam, her face pale. You're taking her side?" Adam shook his head. "I'm taking the side of the truth." I expected Claire to argue, to deflect or protest, but she didn't. My sister's shoulders slumped, her wine glass lowered slowly, and then Claire cried. Not the kind of loud sobbing we used to hear when she wanted attention as a kid, but the kind of cry from someone who just realized they lost something big, something they couldn't get back. "I don't hate Ella," she said through tears. I felt left behind. She left, succeeded, built her life, and I stayed, following the family plan, taking Mom to appointments, cleaning the house, organizing holidays, and everyone still looked toward her. Mom stepped forward, placing a hand on her shoulder. "Claire, I've never compared you two. You're very different. I love you both, in your own ways." "Then why do you still keep her third-place painting ribbon in your nightstand drawer?" Claire asked, her eyes red but honest. I froze. Mom smiled softly. "Because that was the first thing Ella ever brought home on her own. Not because anyone asked, not to compete with you, but because it was hers." I stepped forward, for the first time standing beside my sister in the same breath. "Claire, I didn't leave to make you feel alone. I left because I thought you were the chosen one." Claire didn't respond, but I saw her shoulders tremble. Mom turned to me. "Ella, there's something I need to tell you. I was recently diagnosed with mild memory loss. Nothing serious, but it affects how I keep track of dates, calls, and Claire has helped me a lot. Maybe I've relied on her too much." I took her hand. "It's not your fault, but from now on, please promise me, whatever it is, you'll call me directly, not through anyone else." She nodded, her eyes showing something like renewal. In that moment, I knew this wasn't the end, but at least we were starting over, with truth. My mother hugged me, slowly, tightly, like she wanted to make up for all the years of silence, missed calls, and unnamed gaps between us. On my shoulder, she whispered, "I'm sorry for letting you carry this alone for so long." I didn't respond. I just held her tighter. No words could fully capture that feeling. The feeling of finally being seen, believed, and called by your rightful name in your own family. Claire stood nearby, silent. Her face softened, like a mask had been removed, tired but lighter. I knew healing wouldn't happen in one night, but at least it had begun. My father stepped closer. He stood just one arm's length away, his hand flexing slightly like he was fighting something inside. At last he spoke, quietly but firmly. "Ivy, I was wrong to believe you'd turned your back on the family. I let emotion overtake reason. If you find it in your heart to forgive—" I gave a small nod. "I haven't forgotten, but I'm ready to start over." His gaze softened. For the first time in my life, I didn't see him as an unshakable wall, but as a father trying to learn how to begin again. The party continued, but the energy had shifted. People started speaking more openly, shedding their polite filters. A few relatives came to hug me, ask how I'd been, even apologize for believing a false story for so long. I sat with Mom, Claire, and even Ben, my quiet younger brother, to plan our next family visit, this time at my place in Boston. The next day, I flew back to San Diego. As the plane lifted off, I looked down at the snow-dusted mountains and realized some battles don't need to be won. You just need to show up. That Monday morning, I walked into the 27th floor of Vertex HQ feeling lighter than I had in years. Rachel, my assistant, looked at me curiously. "Everything okay with the family?" I smiled. "Not perfect, but we're getting there." Rachel nodded, handing me a file and my usual unsweetened iced coffee. By around 10 o'clock in the morning, as I was reviewing the restructuring plan for the HR department, an email popped up on my screen. The sender: Stephanie Chen, Senior Executive Director of the corporation. Subject: Nomination for Vice President of Western Operations. In-person meeting request. I reread it several times, my heart pounding like the knock of fate. Stephanie wrote, "We value the composure, transparency, and courage you demonstrated in resolving conflict, not only at work but in how you stood by your personal values under pressure. That is exactly what a senior leadership role requires." I sat frozen for a few seconds. In my mind, I saw Claire frozen in the banquet hall, my mother looking at me with breaking eyes, and my father awkwardly admitting fault for the first time. I hadn't shared the full story with Vertex. I submitted a neutral report, listing the steps I took to manage family conflict during the holidays without letting it affect work. But it turned out that staying grounded and true to my values had made an impression. Later that afternoon, I stepped out of the conference room after finalizing the schedule for my final interview with Stephanie, filled with a strange feeling. By speaking the truth in my own family, I hadn't just healed myself. I had opened the door to a new chapter in my career. On the way home, I stopped by the small park near my place, under the canopy of oak trees where I often walk after work. I sat on a stone bench, pulled out my phone, and texted Mom. "I'm really glad I came back and that you truly listened." Her reply came quickly, just 2 words, but they blurred my eyes with emotion. "Always will." May mornings in Boston are usually still cold, but that day, the day my mom came to visit, the sky was unusually clear and gentle. I stood at the arrivals door of Logan Airport, holding a small sign with her name in my neatest handwriting, heart pounding like I was meeting someone I hadn't seen in years. My mother. Lillian Reynolds emerged from the crowd with her familiar silver-gray suitcase, looking smaller than I remembered, but her eyes still carried that fierce spark. When she saw me, she smiled, a full, genuine smile that almost brought me to tears. "You still look like you're in your 20s, she said as she hugged me tight. "And you're smaller than I imagine," I joked softly. We returned to my little apartment near the Charles River. I had cleaned it top to bottom, set up the guest room with sunlight, fresh flowers, and a custom embroidered neck pillow that read, "You are loved." A small gift, but the message I wanted her to see every morning. The next 3 days were something I once believed I'd never have. I took Mom for walks around Beacon Hill, to the coffee shop I go to every morning, introduced her to the barista who always remembers my order. We sat by the river eating pastries and retelling old stories. Stories I thought had been lost to distance and misunderstanding. Mom listened as I talked about my work, my passions, the dreams I never dared to share at home. And for the first time, she didn't just listen, she understood. "Why didn't you ever come here sooner?" I asked one day as we sat in the public library where I often work on weekends. "I wasn't sure. I was afraid if I came, I'd see that you no longer needed me," she answered, voice trembling. "But I was wrong." I held her hand. "I've always needed you, just not to decide things for me anymore." On the night before her return to Colorado, we sat on my balcony, watching the city lights shimmer on the water. She quietly said, "Claire has started therapy, voluntarily." I turned to her, surprised. A week after the party, she called me, cried a lot. She said she realized she's been living in a role no one forced her into, but no one helped her out of either, and she didn't know how to escape it. I was silent. After a long pause, I finally said, "If she truly wants to change, I'm willing to listen." The next morning, as Mom got ready to leave from the airport, she hugged me again and said, "I want us to try family counseling. You, me, Claire, Ben, and your father. Not because anyone is at fault, but because we need to learn how to exist together in a healthy way." I nodded, feeling for the first time like the future wasn't a foggy unknown. "I'll come back to Boulder next month. We'll start from there." The following week, while I was on a Zoom call with the strategy department, my phone buzzed. A message from Claire. "Do you have time for a call? Not to say everything, just to begin?" Hit the call button. On the other end, Claire's voice still held a trace of hesitation, but the sharpness was gone. "Thank you for not shutting me out even when I probably deserved it." I replied, "No one gets a fresh start if they keep getting shut out." The call only lasted 7 minutes, but every second felt like a step forward, and I cherished each one. 3 months later, I received the official decision. I was appointed Executive Vice President of Vertex's Western region. In my brief speech before the board, I ended with something unexpected. I didn't just learn leadership in boardrooms. I learned it at the family dinner table, a place where truth was sometimes hidden, emotions were distorted, but healing was still possible, if we're willing to set boundaries. Some smiled, not fully catching the meaning, but I knew I had just given myself a blessing. Not for greater success, but for a more authentic life. Ella's story is proof that sometimes, in order to heal a relationship, we must walk through the shadows of pain, face the truth, and set healthy boundaries. In real life, not everyone gets acknowledged right away, but if we hold on to our values and choose dialogue over silence, change can start from within the family. Real connection doesn't come from shared blood, it comes from mutual respect and understanding. What do you think about Ella's journey and the relationships in her family? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to follow the channel for more heartfelt and real-life stories about family and life.